It doesn't start with a scream. It starts with a small mistake you only notice later. A chair that isn't wedged far enough under a doorknob. A hallway light left on to make the dark feel honest. A phone with 2 bars that decides a night is a tunnel. When I was 19, Hollowbrook looked like the safest kind of nowhere. One road in, one supermarket that closed too early, a marsh that breathed mist like a sleeping animal. The Callahan house stared over that marsh. Inside, 2 sisters, Grace, 8, factual and stubborn, Emma, 6, all drawings and elbows. Their father, Mr. Callahan, a flight attendant who disappeared into the sky 3 nights a week. He paid well, leftless, and said the same thing each time he pulled on his coat. Emergency numbers are on the fridge. Don't worry, this place is boring. On good nights, boredom felt like a blanket. Spaghetti bath time, the same 3 picture books until the lion's roar sounded like a yawn. We built a blanket fort that sagged like a tired sail. On bad nights, the house made weather. The radiators hissed like someone trying not to speak. The stairs learned my weight and repeated it back to me an octave lower. In the upstairs hall, a draft moved with intention, as if a person had just walked by and decided to be air instead. The first oddity arrived wrapped in Grace's matter-of-fact voice. There's someone outside my door. Not a question, a weather report. I did what adults do when we want to turn a child's honesty into imagination. I smiled and left her door ajar. See? Open. Safe. She watched the crack like a lookout watches fog. I went downstairs to finish dishes, each plate loud like I was broadcasting courage to the room. Knock. Not the house settling. Not the tick of cooling pipes. A soft, deliberate sound from the upstairs hall. The kind meant to wake one person, not the house. The kind that knows your name without saying it. I shut the tap. Silence put weight on my ribs. Another knock. Not at the door below, but at the air above. In Grace's room, the door I'd left open was now unopened. Half an inch of darkness, like the night had been poured too full and was leaking out. Grace lay under the blanket in a way that was organized, not panicked. She left a breathing hole exactly the shape of fear. I lifted her and felt the fast rabbit of her heart. Into my room, I said. Emma was in the bathroom, making faces at toothpaste foam. I herded both girls into the guest room and turned the lock with a tiny, inadequate click. I called Mr. Callahan from the guest bath. The tiles were colder than they had any right to be. The mirror fogged like a witness who didn't want to see. He answered on the second ring. Could someone be in the house? I whispered, surprised to hear my voice already set to quiet. He exhaled in a way I remember from airport announcements. If it's anyone, it's probably my ex, he said. Long story. If she's there, she'll leave if you make noise. The problem with instructions is they assume the house is listening. I set the girls on the bed and dragged a chair under the knob. It was the kind of chair that looks like furniture and acts like a suggestion. Somewhere down the hall, a floorboard rehearsed a complaint. With moves and cold, with also moves on purpose. I counted to 60. At 43, the lamp blinked once, twice, then remembered itself. I hate coincidences when they happen exactly where coincidences are useful. Emma whispered. Do you hear breathing? I wanted to say no. Instead, I heard it too, the faint rhythm of lungs that weren't mine. Just outside the door, a soundtrack running on the scene. The girls studied my face to learn how scared to be. I made a mouth shape that meant quiet. Obstacles lined up like a grocery list. The landline on the hall table was dead. Later we'd find a cord nudged from the wall. So gently the plastic had kept its dignity. My phone wobbled between 1 and 2 bars. 911 stuck on, connecting like the night had chewed the signal. The guest room window latch refused at the exact angle that makes you think you're weak before you think the latch is strong. I could carry one child at a time, not 2. The hall was long enough for a door to open just enough for a hand. So I made noise. I flicked the lamp on and off until the bulb felt like a small sun trying to be born. I banged the desk drawer with a ruler. I'm calling the police, I said in my mother bear voice. The breathing stopped. Footsteps retreated, careful, like they'd measured the distance, and didn't want to wake the old floorboards more than necessary. The house held its breath with us. A full minute passed the way minutes do in hospitals and horror movies. Too long to believe in, too short to be safe. When I finally opened the door, the hallway was a museum of ordinary. The bathroom door, which I was almost sure I'd left open, was shut like a mouth trying to be polite. The nightlight at the far end flickered once in apology. I touched Grace's doorknob. It felt cool and damp, as if someone had pressed a forehead to it. I turned and met resistance. Locked from the inside. I hadn't locked it. That's when the house exhaled through the front door. A slam, big, performative, as if to say, "See, the danger has left." I stepped to the top of the stairs and saw nothing except the hall mirror reflecting a thinner version of me holding my breath. The marsh hummed. The fridge thrummed. Under it all, the kind of quiet that thinks it has won. I took the girls out the back, down the splintered steps into a yard that kept the day's frost like a bad memory. We huddled by the old grill that still smelled like summer. From there, 911 finally answered and untangled my story from my fear. Officers arrived with a theater of blue lights and the wrong kind of calm. They swept rooms, found no one, told me the front door had been unlocked but not forced. Probably wind, one said. In Hollowbrook, the wind had learned to sign paperwork. Mr. Callahan came home early, apology written in the tilt of his shoulders. He said his exes named the way you say a weather pattern you move to avoid. She's been texting from new numbers. I blocked them, he offered, as if blocks worked on people the way they work on apps. The police recommended new locks, as if locks are cure rather than costume. For a week, Boren returned like a kind guest. Then, the house reminded us who it was. The chair by the front door was an inch off from where I'd left it. Just enough to be a private joke. The hall smelled faintly of detergent on a day I hadn't done laundry. Emma showed me a drawing. 3 stick figures at a door. Us. I asked. She shook her head. They live in the hallway, she said. They don't all come at once. 2 days later, a locksmith arrived in a branded gray fleece. Logitech. He swapped the cylinder in 3 minutes, smiling like a training video. "We do smart access for the holiday. Let's near the marsh," he said. "Nice place. You're safe now." He handed me a brochure. The cover showed a polished ceiling fan hub reflecting a tidy room. I didn't like that the fan had a pupil. That evening, an unknown number sent a photo, nearly black except for a smear of electric blue angled at a bed, the honest blue of a digital clock, and the wrinkle I make in the duvet without meaning to. "Nice fort," the text read. I hadn't built a fort that night. The girls had. In the guest room, I unplugged the router. The air felt cleaner, like I'd taken out a smell. I walked room to room with a flashlight and the narrow courage of someone who has already started the scene and can't cut. Above the guest bed, the smoke detector's green LED blinked like a heartbeat. I twisted the faceplate. Inside lived a lens the size of a lentil wired to ambition. On the plastic, date, model, MAC address, evidence written in neat engineer handwriting. I called the police again, while an officer slid the camera into a clean bag that made it look guilty. Someone knocked with the confidence of a person who believes doors owe him. Logitech looked very at home on my porch. "Compliance inspection, quarterly," he said, "clipboard ready. We have authorization from the owner." "Not tonight," I said. He smiled at the officers like he'd expected an audience. "We don't install cameras," he told me. "We install safety." Behind him, the porch light flickered. In the living room, the fan spun a slow halo. In its polished hub, small convex mirror, a coin of truth. I counted 4 figures. Me, 2 officers, 1 fleece. For a breath, a 5th shape leaned in from the hall, tall and tilted, the kind of present a reflection invents when it borrows light. I turned. Empty hall. The reflection kept the secret. The officers asked Logitech to leave pending inquiry. He went willingly, smiling like a receipt. Mr. Callahan switched companies the next day and promised different locks again, like a man offering a second umbrella in a storm. I finished the week because promises to children matter more than fear. I taped over LEDs, counted screws, let the kettle hiss longer than needed, so the house would have a talk over it. On my last night before Mr. Callahan's sister took over, we did puzzles at the table. Puzzles are secrets pretending to be pictures, Grace said. Emma drew the marsh with a face. At bedtime, the lamp flickered once in farewell. I wedged the chair properly this time and told myself I had learned something. At 3:04 a.m., the nightstand drawer moved the width of a fingernail, then more. I hadn't touched it. It crept open like a typo correcting itself. A head leaned into the dark, featureless in the sliver, whites reversed. The voice that followed was new and uneasily familiar, like a song you don't remember learning. "Give it back," it said, almost kindly, "and I'll go." What I remember next is motion. Heel brace against wood, palm on the chair, window latch refusing then relenting, cold shouldering into room, like a guest who knows where the mugs are. I slid into night air that smelled of wet pennies and reed rot, down iron steps that sang about rust, into a yard that kept its secrets. Behind me, silence arrived too quickly, the way rooms do after a story ends itself. Police found nothing again. The locks were new, the explanation older than houses. "She has a key," Mr. Callahan said, as if keys explain people, or someone does. He adopted a dog with gravity in her chest and named her Mercy, as if naming were a spell. I left Hollowbrook with the uneasy sense that leaving is just a different kind of staying. Months later, Grace mailed me a drawing. 3 figures at a door. In the fan's polished hub above them, a 4th figure looked back. No face, only the suggestion of a lens. On the back she'd written, "They don't all come at once." Trust begins easily. Ashmoor was small enough that a familiar school name felt like proof. Caleb, 16 from the local high school, showed up with shy smile, a paper bag of pizza coupons, and an easy laugh that made adults nod. I was 8. My brother Sam was 6. Our parents were going to a reunion. 3 nights, Thursday through Sunday. Nothing dramatic, they promised. "We'll call," they said, and left a landline number on the fridge that I would somehow forget to memorize. The first night dissolved into Nintendo in the basement. Caleb said he loved the same game I did. And when he said the cheat codes out loud, I believe him the way kids believe magic if it arrives as information. He ordered pepperoni, gave Sam the best slice, and told me I was team captain. Daylight made him ordinary. Ordinary made him safe. Night makes other shapes. I woke to my door clicking. When your eyes adjust in a child's room, they have to pass through all your toys first. Stuffed animals turn into witnesses. Posters turn into audience. Past them, in the corner, Caleb stood with his hands at his sides like he'd been placed there by a careful person. "I'm here," he whispered. It didn't sound like comfort. It sounded like a claim. My mouth pulled a scream out of air. Caleb froze, as if he hadn't planned for that sound. He backed up with the slow caution of someone practicing being gentle. "Sorry," he said softly. "Bad dream." He left before I learned what would have happened next. I ran to Sam's room, lay on the floor with a blanket over my head, and tried to breathe quietly enough that the house would forget I existed. Morning reset him. Pancakes, jokes, soccer in the backyard. He refereed like it was a World Cup, whistle and all. Our friend Zachary came over. We ran until our shins talked back. The whistle's bright note turned afternoon into order. I began to like him again. That's the cruelty of contrast. Daylight can launder a night. That evening, the phone on the hallway table was gone. I moved it to charge, Caleb said easily, even though it never needed charging. My parents didn't call. He said the battery must have died. He smiled when he said it, and the smile didn't reach his eyes because it didn't need to. He didn't need me to believe him. He needed me to accept the new shape of the house. The second night, I lay awake and refused to look at the door. I counted to 100 twice. Somewhere, a floorboard learned how to speak my name and said it to itself. The door didn't open. A minute later, the closet did. Not all the way, just enough for a shadow to compromise with the room. I turned on the light and saw nothing but my own smallness. When I switched it off, I heard the slow, careful press of a bare foot on carpet. "I'm here," he said again, from a new place in the room. This time I didn't scream. I said, "Sam," very loudly, like a sentence you throw down a hallway. Caleb moved. quickly, too quickly for his usual gentleness, and I did scream then. He retreated. "I was just checking," he whispered. "It's my job." Morning found him quiet and useful, all chores done. He avoided my eyes and fed Sam extra syrup, a ritual apology. On Saturday, he invited me to play downstairs while Sam napped. I said no. He didn't argue. He filled the day with games that made sound. Cartoons, vacuuming, a blender for milkshakes. Sound is a way to hide intent. When Zachary rang the bell, Caleb answered too fast, like he'd been waiting for a witness. We played until dusk. Zachary's mother called him home at the exact moment the sky chooses gray. Caleb smiled at the timing like you smile at a coin landing on its edge. Night 3 had its own plan. I moved the dresser in front of my door. I rehearsed what adults say in movies. I placed my plastic trophy, a ballerina with a snapped leg, under the pillow because metal was forbidden. The house became a ship, and every creak was a sea asking, "Come in." At some point I slept. The sound that woke me wasn't the door. It was the end of patience. A whisper near my ear that didn't belong to air. "I'm here." His hand touched the blanket, like a question about to be answered. I screamed, bolted, and ran straight into Sam's room. Too late. Caleb was already there, kneeling by the bed, saying Sam's name like a lullaby with the wrong notes. Get away from him. I yelled, the kind of yell that belongs to someone older, the kind that steals power back because it refuses to be small. Caleb stood, palms up like a teacher about to demonstrate calm. "You're overreacting," he said. "Doors drift." I was checking. He moved toward me very slowly, as if closing a distance makes it disappear. What saved us wasn't bravery. It was a neighbor's routine. Footsteps on the porch, a key in the wrong door, the sound of someone else existing near us. Caleb exhaled and folded. Smile back on, voice reset to friendly. "It's late," he said. "We should all sleep." He left us there with the door open like a promise. He could break later. Morning brought our parents in a tip for Caleb. He accepted without meeting my eyes. I didn't tell. 8-year-olds are bad at believing they'll be believed. I watched him walk away wearing the whistle on a string like a medal. Time makes a bad archivist. It misfiles the facts and keeps the feelings too sharp. Years later, I found Caleb's name in local news. Unlawful entry. Suspended sentence. A paragraph so short it felt like a shrug. The mugshot eyes hadn't changed. Calm. Calculating. Waiting. After the article, Sam texted me a photo. A small padded envelope. No return address. Inside, a referee whistle. Not the same one. Exactly the same kind. I told him to throw it away. He said he would. Then he sent me a second photo, close up like proof. Our childhood address engraved on the stem, so small you'd only read it if you wanted to. Snow hides tracks, until it doesn't. I was 16, hired by the Millers to watch their boys, Daniel 10 and Noah 5, in a house on Frostwood Lane where the wind made the gutters play the same lonely note all winter. The rules list on the counter was long. At the bottom, a line in thin handwriting. Noah sometimes hears tapping on his window at night. It's his imagination. I decided to believe that sentence because the night is easier if you do. We built a pillow fort so big it blocked the hallway, like a friendly barricade. We stirred cocoa until the marshmallows lost their reasons. Daniel pretended not to love the cartoon. Noah fell asleep with his hand wrapped around my hoodie string. Quiet arrived honest and heavy. At 10:04 p.m., a scream cut the house into two kinds of rooms. Rooms with me in them and rooms without. Noah sat upright in bed, eyes too wide for a child who'd been asleep. "It's tapping," he whispered. "It's back." I told him about branches and ice and stories that make themselves louder at night. Then the sound answered for him. 3 taps, not the scratchy scatter of sleet. Clean, knuckle true, on glass. I peeled the curtain. Snow churned under security light, like a million tiny secrets try and tell themselves at once. No person, no branch, just the certainty that a sound doesn't have to come with a face to be real. Obstacles multiplied. The storm flattened cell coverage to a rumor. The house Wi-Fi hiccuped and then forgot its name. The flashlight flickered like a performer. The landline dial tone pulsed and quit. In the moments when the power dimmed, the boys' faces looked like old photographs, soft around the edges, too quiet to move. I did the thing you do when you want the night to know you're bigger than it. I cracked the window and said in my most adult voice, "I've called the police." The wind took the word police and shredded it. For a second, the storm answered with something like footsteps. Crunch, crunch, retreat, and I thought we were done. Then tapping started at Daniel's window across the hall. Then downstairs at the kitchen glass. Then the side door. Too many points at once. Too many hands. I got both boys into the hallway and sat them inside the pillow fort, which suddenly felt like a joke told by a house. I gave Daniel the flashlight and Noah the whisk from the kitchen, because he wanted something to hold, and weapons aren't always sharp. If the lights go, we count out loud together, I said. If you hear your name and it isn't me, you do not answer. I taught them a code knock, 2 quick, 1 slow, because rituals make rooms feel trained. The power blinked and stayed. I braced a chair under the front door and watched frost grow in the glass's corners like white mold spreading in time-lapse. Upstairs, the tapping resumed. Glass, 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 patience personified. Please stop. Noah whispered to no one. The house said nothing back, and that was worse. A break in the storm let cell service pretend to exist. I got through to dispatch. "We'll send a car," the operator said. "You're not the first call on that block." Not the first. I told the boys that sentence like it was a blanket. We heard a siren. We didn't see a car. The street had been erased by snow the way bad memories try and fail to erase themselves. Footprints arrived before the police. Under Noah's window, deep ovals facing in. Under Daniel's, a set that approached paused and stepped side to side like someone deciding which face to present to the glass. Below the kitchen, 2 prints on the back steps, then none. No approach, no retreat, as if someone liked the idea of existing there and nowhere else. When the officers finally churned their way up the drive, they were not surprised. "We've had reports," one said. "Guy's been casing for weeks. Likes windows." I hated that verb. It made the boys into products on a shelf. They circled the house with flashlights, wrote things on pads, made snow into evidence, and then into nothing again. They left us with a phone number and a sense that we had been briefly owned and then released. The boys slept in the hallway that night because language only does so much. I sat in the kitchen and listened to the clock. Ref used to be afraid. At 2:13 a.m., something tapped the glass door once hard, a punctuation mark. I didn't look. Looking fed it. By morning, the world pretended to be kind again. Sun on the ice. Cocoa reheated into sugar. The Millers returned early and apologized in the soft voices of people who hired a storm. I refused payment because refusing felt like control. They insisted. The insistence sounded like a bandage. Weeks passed. Snow melted into rumors. Then Noah's mother called with a voice made of new fear. "We had another sitter," she said. She heard tapping, too. Only this time it answered from inside. She didn't explain how a house makes that sound to itself. She didn't have to. I knew how echoes work. Sometimes they get impatient and go first. I tried to tuck the night into the place where stories sleep. It refused. Little things found me. A single marble in my backpack that wasn't mine, cold as a cyst. A folded piece of paper in my coat pocket with a hand-drawn window on it, and 3 tiny circles at the bottom edge like fingernail marks. I threw it all away. The trash felt like surrender. In spring, I walked down Frostwood Lane just to prove to my body that the street still existed. The Miller house had a for sale sign, leaning like a tired man. The curtains were open. The kitchen door wore scratch marks I couldn't stop counting. 3 groups of 3, like someone trying to teach the door a language. A neighbor watering mud told me the family moved to an apartment with no ground floor windows. "Smaller place," he said. "Feels safer." He didn't sound convinced. What made me stop was a sound from inside the empty house. Not loud, not dramatic, just a polite patient rhythm of knuckles on glass in a room where no one lived. 3 taps. A pause. 3 taps again. I waited for a third round to make it meaningful. The house did as asked. I walked away without speeding up because fear likes it when you run. That summer, during a heat wave mean enough to peel posters from walls, a package arrived at my door with no return address. Inside, the whisk I'd handed Noah, the handle chewed a little by small teeth. I didn't tell the Millers. I didn't know where they lived anymore. I held the whisk by the sink and listened to my apartment decide which noises were mine. On the first snow of the next year, my phone buzzed with an unknown number and a photo. I opened in a place with people, bus, daylight, deliberate safety. The picture was black except for the pale reflection of a window and the small, honest blur of a digital clock in the corner. My own duvet wrinkle. My own room. Nice fort, the message read. I moved the bed that night away from the window as if distance were a kind of wall. The tapping hasn't returned. Not audibly,